That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a big one, dude. That's a giant one.
There is one with him still.
Yeah, I saw it.
Get the net. Oh.
I don't want to get.
I don't want to get to. All right.
Yeah.
Chasing man, it shows how to perform. Well, your style's been changed because we're so vain, but you'll take a sunset for stone. Look out, honey, you're bad, bad, bad. Here you come, said you're bad, bad, bad. Sing for a time, you're the hottest ticket in town. Well, you show us new moves, cause baby, you're smooth, you're above us.
Well, get those life vests zipped in clips, strap down those rods, and stash away those tackle bags because we are going fishing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bass Tour Anglers Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Nice-Wonger, and today we have Western Tournament Pro Nick Wood on the show. But first, if you like the content that we have on this channel, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a comment if you're so inclined. By now, you know that we are the Western representatives for ducket fishing. You know these guys, the strongest pro staff in all of professional tournament fishing. We are adding new dealerships in the West just about every week. If you're in the Ventura area, Los Angeles County, Orange County, the Inland Empire, San Diego, Lake Havasu, Sacramento, we've got a store to hook you up. Are you a tournament angler? Do you produce content on YouTube and other platforms? Ducket Fishing is looking for pro staffers and influencers in the West to help us gain the exposure that we need. If you're interested in joining our team, send us a DM on Instagram or go to our website, basstouranglers.com, and send us an email. We're also looking for tackle shops that want to carry our lineup of pro-driven products. If you own a shop, or if you know a shop that we should call on, again, send us a DM on Instagram or go to our website, basstouranglers.com, and send us an email. We would love to be able to tell you about the ducket fishing lineup of pro-driven products, rods, reels, and baits.
Change. It's inevitable. To improve, you must adapt. The sport is evolving. A paradigm shift is a fundamental change of basic concepts. Don't get left behind. Introducing Paradigm. Paradigm Reels by Ducket Fishing. Pro-driven.
Our guest today is largely regarded as a spotted bass expert. He won the Juan Bass Shasta Lake Pro-Am in 2009 and then did it again in 2010. He was the champion of the Bass Nation Western Regional on Lake Shasta in 2017. He is a competitor on the Apex Tour, the most prestigious tour in the West, and he just won the first Wild West Bass Pro-Am for the 2022 season, also at Lake Shasta. Nick Wood, welcome to the Bass Tour Anglers Podcast. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Before we go too far into this,
you do well on spotted bass fisheries, and this is a question I've always wanted to ask somebody that was knowledgeable about spotted bass. In your mind, what is the biggest difference between a spotted bass and a largemouth or even a smallmouth bass?
Well, the spotted bass and smallmouth, for me personally, I think are pretty similar. They're a really aggressive fish. At times, the smallmouth aren't as aggressive as the spotted bass, and they're not as structure oriented as a largemouth. They tend to roam. They'll suspend a lot more than a largemouth, but they're a lot more aggressive. So they are easier to catch in the aspects of being able to power fish. You can throw reaction baits, moving baits to catch them. There's a lot of guys that do have success with other techniques, with the floating fly. Ryan Friend's really good with a floating fly. He does real good with that. And Greg Gutierrez is another good guy that has a lot of success with a slower approach. But I would say probably myself, Cody Meyer, Jeff Michaels, we're all Northern California spotted bass fishermen. And I feel like that we go at it at a little bit more of an aggressive approach. Cody's probably a little more versatile and slowing down and being more aggressive. And so is Jeff. I shouldn't say it like that. I think we all are, but I think that we have a tendency to probably do a little more aggressive swim bait fishing.
I know Jeff likes to throw those swim baits for those spots.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. He's a close friend of mine, and he does that. I know that for sure.
Yeah. He's always tough on Shasta. I know. So in my experience with spotted bass, I feel like those fish sometimes bite better in cold weather. Maybe times when largemouth might suspend and be kind of dormant. I feel like if there's spotted bass, you can still get them. Has that been your experience? Or
oh yeah, colder temperatures, it doesn't hurt the spotted bass like it does the largemouth. Even the small, well, I should say either smallmouth too, or again, I'm comparing the largemouth to the smallmouth and the spotted bass. I think smallmouth and spots are similar, but yeah, the cold water, you can still catch a pretty good bag with spotted bass. And I always say that spotted bass are a trout that's with a bass.
Yeah.
Look like a bass.
Yeah. Bass mentality. Yeah. That's a good way of describing spotted bass. Well, congratulations on the big win. Before we get into how you got them this last week, I've had some experience on Shasta. Plenty of fish, lots of limits, but they're always these cookie cutters. And even looking at the results of the tournament last week, I think everybody caught limits both days. But how do you go about targeting bigger fish in a place like Shasta that has so many clones swimming around in it?
Well, in the wintertime, the way I approach, trying to target larger spotted bass is I try to find an area that's got bait and you've got a concentration of the larger fish. Like I was saying, the spotted bass are really aggressive. So in practice, I've got a lot of people that I've talked to that had really good practice, catching, a good one here or there. But you've got to find yourself a concentration in the wintertime when it's cold. You've got to find yourself a concentration of larger fish. And typically you find that where you find the bait. And how I was approaching that particular tournament was there was a lot of bait up the arms because of the lake being so low. The shad you're seeing a lot more shad. So they're right at the Thermocline at all the ends of the rivers, the Backbone Arm, the Sacramento Arm, the McLeod Swamp, the Pit. They're all, when you get to that cold water mark, there's a lot of bait. And I knew that area would have a concentration of fish. So my approach is to find the bait in the wintertime. Now in the spring and the summer and stuff like that, how I approach to try to get a bigger bite is in Shasta is there's a huge amount of trout in there. So in those big spots, eat trout. Yeah. So then you throw a bait that the big fish are, wanting to bite. And again, in the spring, you got big concentrations of large fish pulling up on those points. So you're targeting those big flat points that they're going to spawn on. So it's just putting yourself in an area where there's a lot of fish, bigger fish. not, you can go anywhere and catch fish on Shasta Lake. You can pull up to any rock and catch fish, but to catch a tournament winning bag of fish, is you just got to put yourself in an area where there's going to be larger fish, and you got to understand where they're going to be at. So,
yeah, that's such valuable information to get. So I know that a lot of the tours pick Shasta early in the year, and I think it's a good lake to start on because, as you said, those fish tend to bite well even when it's cold. Talk about the conditions coming into the event at Shasta last week.
Well, like I said, we're kind of experiencing in Northern California. We're experiencing a pretty substantial drought. So the lake's real low. December we had a lot of weather. The lake muddied up, but in January we haven't had any weather. So everything kind of stabilized. So I knew again that there was a big concentration of shad at the ends of the arms, and I just pretty much went to the ends of each arm. Looking for which one I felt like was going to be the best area that had the most bait, where I could get bit, and still catch quality fish. And the sac arm was the arm that I felt like I could win a big event. It's not easy to get bit up there. That's there's the big ones are up there, and it's just not. It's not like going up there and just catching numbers and numbers of fish, but you just I knew there was good ones in there. I got some good bites in practice. So that was my strategy. Just go to ends of each arm. You got 2 days when you're fishing Wild West, you get 2 days of practice. It's off limits for 10 days, and you just go and figure out the best areas that you could catch them. And that was my strategy, is just to go to the ends of the arms, figure out which one's going to be the best, and let it, stick to it.
I think it's interesting you talk about the Sacramento arm. I in the years that I've been involved, it seems like most guys come out of that marina and they make a right turn down towards the pit and places like that, because those are some traditional big fish arms of the lake. I guess I just haven't heard of a lot of events being won up in the Sacramento arm, but I guess if you know what you're doing, it's probably a good place. You have a lot of company up there?
Oh yeah.
Guys,
the word got out pretty quick. I think 5 of the top 10 guys were fishing. We were all fishing right around each other. I know myself, Cody Meyer, Jeff Michaels, Glenn Lockhart. I know Greg Gutierrez came up there. There was a handful of us we stayed up there. Greg, he has some other areas that he was fishing, but I know Jeff and Cody and Glenn and myself we stayed up there for the first 2 days, and we were talking to each other all day long. The second day of the event, we got a lot more people because the word got out that there were some good bags coming out up there. So,
okay, so in terms of what you learned during pre-fish, tell me a little bit more about this Thermocline thing you have going, because typically Thermocline seems like layered water that's fairly deep, but you're talking about the backs of creeks, right?
Yeah, well, I might not be giving it the right terminology, but when I refer to it as a thermocline, it's just a cold water transition where warm water hits cold water. The traditional thermocline, I understand what you're saying, is 30 foot down, you hit a warm water, or vice versa, it's cold water in the summertime. But when I refer to that is so like I was saying, we had a pretty good December of weather, so we have a lot of snow melt off coming off. So the water coming in from the Sacramento Arm, which is coming from the Mount Shasta drainage, is just all snow melt. And that water temperature is probably in that high 40s, 41, 42 degrees, and really clear. Well, it hits the main body water temperature, which is averaging around 48 to 50. So at that transition, the water does mix and it's kind of boiling around, but at that transition, those fish just the bait, primarily the bait. It's kind of funny because you get to those areas and the water really it behaves differently, because like debris, you'll see debris floating down the river, and it seems to float at that transition. You can be going down the water down or up the lake, and you can get to that point, and you can actually see a debris line of small bark floating, and it stays at that spot, and you can pretty much know you're at that point. Wow. So it's interesting how that water reacts to things. So water will sink at different temperatures.
the water at those colder temperatures is more dense, and so stuff tends to float better, right?
Yep.
Wow, that
Absolutely.
is really interesting. Wow.
Yep.
And so that's
Yep.
where that's where you find your spot right there on that.
Yeah.
That's
So
really,
for a tip for people that are fishing, if
yeah.
you are going up, an arm in the wintertime and you find an area that the debris is at, that's a good area a good chance that's probably going to be the Thermocline area, and there should be a concentration of fish there.
Boy, that was a genuine gold nugget right there. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So day one, you weighed in 12, 13. Wow. I would have loved to weigh 12 pounds in a tournament at Shasta. Found yourself in third place. Did you feel like you were in a good place? Did it feel right?
It did. I just knew that there was good fish in there, and I didn't do anything special that day. I was just fishing around. I knew the area wasn't too beat up, but we were just bouncing around, and I really hadn't been honed in on where I really wanted to fish. I just knew there was probably, I would say, a quarter of a mile of area that all of us were fishing in, and we were all just kind of moving around catching fish, and we were all able to catch a pretty decent bag. Jeff had 12, Cody had high 10s, I had 12, Glenn had high 10s. We were all moving around, and I got a pretty good bite. I think I had a 4 something that day, and just some solid fish. So I didn't really think that I had an opportunity. I felt like I was in a position, but I didn't really think I was in quite the position I was until day 2.
Okay.
I just bounced around, but I really got things dialed in on day 2. That's when things really transitioned for me.
Now, are we talking about the baits, or is this something that the local guys up there like to keep tight to the vest, or can you talk about what you caught your fish on?
Oh, it was Kitex because the bait.
Oh.
So yeah, it's just a 4-inch swing impact. I mean, I was throwing a Tennessee shad. I know other guys were throwing trout color. I don't think it really mattered. So when the first day you would catch fish, and there's so much bait in the area, they would be puking up bait. But on the second day, the interesting thing that I was seeing happen was, as I was catching fish, and this happened, it was crazy the second day. I got really dialed in the second day on a little stretch. And as I was fishing, I was catching fish that were puking up shad, but the shad were still alive. They were crippled shad. So there was, at one point, there had to have been 50, 60 dead shad for me catching fish that were floating on the surface that were still flickering. So I knew they were actively feeding on shad at that. I was right in the middle of what they were. The bait was there, the fish were feeding on it, and I easily threw back. I had almost 12. I had 11.99 the second day, and I easily threw back at least 11 pounds of weight because I was teeter-tottering. My biggest fish was just so close to my smallest fish, and I was just teeter-tottering these fish, and they were so close, and I'd catch a fish. I'd go through every single fish to make sure that I was so not excited, but wanting to make sure I didn't make a mistake. I would go right back through every one of my fish, teeter-totter them. I don't use scales. I use a teeter-totter because ounces matter in Shasta. So
yeah,
I just go through them and teeter-totter them. And they were just, like I said, I would throw back a fish that would barely rock the scale.
We're talking about a balance beam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a balance beam tournament.
Yeah. I don't use scale. On Shasta, I don't use a scale. Gravity's going to be it's going to tell me what's going to happen.
Well, when I fished Shasta, my balance beam fish were all like 1.1s, and but if you're balance beaming 2.5, 3 pound fish, that's not too bad.
Yeah, I felt pretty confident after the second day, for sure.
Now, you weighed a little bit less on day 2, but you moved up into first place. Some of the other competitors must have slipped a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier. I felt like I was really moving into. I got things dialed in on the second day. There's a little stretch up there, right at the Thermocline. It's just a kind of a rock wall, but there's a little bit of a gut indentation in there, and it was probably in about 40 feet. So on the lake, over the years, has kind of made a silt bed across the river channel, and it's about 40 feet. So the walls come down at about 40 feet, and you got about 100 yards of just 40 feet flat silt, and then you hit the other side. So right at that transition where the wall hit the silt line, there's a little gut there, and the bait was just stacked in there. And I would cast. Well, first thing in the morning, I was catching them suspending in about 10 feet of water. But as the pressure, weekend anglers, fun fishermen driving by, the bait started to settle, and I would just start fishing a little deeper as the day moved on. And I could not do anything wrong on Saturday. I went through, man, I could not, it was just one after another. And I was fishing with a good friend of mine, Bill Townsend, who's a absolute beast on Shasta. He's won tons of tournaments there, and he's kind of settled down and wants to fish as a co-angler now. And unfortunately, he wasn't getting the bite dialed in like I was. And it just made me, I wanted Bill to do good, but it sounds crazy, but it made me feel confident that I could keep up with Bill, or maybe, I was catching fish, and I have so much respect for Bill as an angler. And he was, I would have done anything for him to catch fish, but it was also giving me a little bit of a drive to know that I was really doing something different.
Yeah.
So,
You figured
yep.
out something within something to that made a difference. And that's
yep.
crazy how bass fishing can be that way sometimes.
Yep.
So,
and with the most respect to Bill, when I say that, I don't want to be disrespectful to him, because he's such
absolutely.
a good fisherman.
Absolutely.
I just felt like I was really dialed in.
He'd have done the same to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going into day 3, you had a 1.13 lead. A Wild West Bass uses a 100th of a pound scoring system. And they always have. I think a lot of the Western tours have always used those hundredths instead of ounces. But a 113 lead, that's like an extra keeper for some guys. Were you confident with a lead like that?
Not really, to be honest with you. I was surprisingly calm going into the tournament, just because I've been fishing tournaments long enough now. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I knew that Cody and I were fishing right, and he was the one that I was most concerned with, because we were literally talking throughout the day. We were fishing in the same area. I knew he could have a 12-pound day, and I could potentially have an 8-pound day.
Yeah.
If I didn't get the bite. So, the concern was there, but I tried to not let it affect my fishing, and let it, just go out and fish. Worrying about that isn't going to do anything, because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I'll be honest with you, about 1:30, it was starting to get in my head, and I had about probably 8.5 pounds.
Ooh.
And I started to make it. I went ahead and made a move, and I've said it in multiple interviews. I started down the river, and as I was going, I seen Cody, and he was still grinding at it. And I stopped on a rock pile, and I was telling myself, this is a wrong decision. Don't do this. And I stopped and fished, and I fished real fast for probably 20 minutes. And I just told myself, just go back and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. And I went back there, and at 2:30, I caught that 4-pounder.
Yeah.
And I just, like I said, when it's meant to be, and it's just, you make the right decisions and things happen, so.
That's fishing intuition right there. And that's that little voice that talks to you all the time. And when we're spun out and frustrated, we tend to ignore that little voice, because nothing else has worked. So why will this work? But if you listen to that little voice, look at that did.
Yep, absolutely. Your instincts and I'm a strong believer in that, is one of the most powerful tools if you listen to it. I've talked to a lot of guys, and there's so many little gadgets that we're putting on our boats right now that I think we're losing our instincts on fishing. So we got to be careful. And don't get me wrong, I use them all, and they've all helped me. But that you've got to, you've got to listen. That's a tool that you need to listen to, and you need to, and there's times that it's, it does steer you the wrong way. But I've been doing this long enough that I think that I've got the information, and I try to apply it to the best of my knowledge, and it works out sometimes. I'll be honest with you, sometimes it kicks me in the tail.
Well, that's a great story. That's a great story. You're now in your second season on the Apex Tour. I find the Apex Tour to be absolutely fascinating. the Apex is, I think it's the most prestigious thing we've got going out here in the West. Only the top 50 anglers in the region are invited to do this. What has the Apex Tour meant, do you think, to Western pros?
Well, it's given us an opportunity to actually showcase the caliber of anglers that we have out on the West Coast. Because there's a lot of us that, that aren't able to go out and try to chase the Elite Series and go back east and fish. It's harder. And this has given us an opportunity to fish for a lot of money with a lot of exposure, for the guys on the West Coast. And we have got a really, really big, stout group of anglers that can go and fish anywhere against anybody. I've been back east and I know what it's like to fish against those guys. And we have got a extremely good, group of anglers that fish out here. So
Absolutely.
It's given us the ability to do that. And, with all the, sponsors and everybody stepping up and the vision that they have for the Apex, I really feel like this is an opportunity for guys to support it and to make things grow on the West Coast, to have something that we can really, really, truly hang our hat on and have a good, circuit out here that is a prestigious, circuit.
I know it's getting a lot of attention from people back east.
Absolutely.
It's there's a buzz for sure.
Yep.
For sure. So you were 4th overall in points last year on the Apex Tour. So it goes to show that you can catch bass on other lakes other than Shasta. Which is your favorite lake outside of Shasta?
I don't really know. I mean, I really enjoy going to the Delta. There's a lot of different challenges that it produces, but I don't really have a favorite. I really enjoy fishing for smallmouth.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good event at the Elmanor, and it's all smallmouth. I enjoy fishing for smallmouth. Trinity Lake is a local lake that we have here. It's largemouth and smallmouth. I really enjoy fishing there. I really enjoyed going to Mojave. That was primarily smallmouth.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yep. And so I don't have a really, if I don't fun fish, I don't go out and just, hey, well, let's go and just, X lake is producing 40-pound stringers. Let's go there and have a fun week. I don't do that. If I go fishing, it's completely tournament fishing. I'm practicing for a tournament. My kids are getting older, 8 and 10. So they're wanting to get, so there's a little bit more fun fishing on that aspect, but I'm not a fun fisherman. I'm a tournament fisherman, I guess.
It's what a pro does. A pro is a pro.
Yeah.
Pro fishes, gets ready for tournaments.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you about Mojave because the first stop of the Apex Tour, that was an early season event. It was like the first weekend in January, I think, or maybe the second weekend, but it was early.
Yeah.
And Lake Mojave. When I heard you guys were going to Lake Mojave in January, I thought, oh, that's going to be tough.
Yeah. Yes,
What was your impression of that lake?
Well, honestly, it was a little strange. I never even went to the ramp the day before. We got there, and I was staying with John Pearl. We got there, got checked into our room. As soon as I got my truck parked, I had to grab my luggage, get to my room, get down, get to a meeting. There's just with the Apex, there's a lot of commitment to things that you have to do other than fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So we got there, we're doing, interviews, meetings, got ready for the next day, launched my boat in the dark. And I knew there was a big concentration of smallmouth in there. And I tried to apply the information that I've over the years, just looking for those long, flat, gravelly points that smallmouth like to stay on. And that's what I targeted. And the first day I was doing good. The first day, I think I was sitting 4th. I had a little over 14 pounds, but I only had 4 fish.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't confident. I ran into a few, and then after, I just was hoping I can get a couple more bites, and it went out there the second day and I couldn't get bit. It was extremely tough fishing, super clear water.
Yeah.
I was in 40 feet of water, and I could plain as day see a pair of needle nose pliers at the bottom of the lake.
Oh, wow. That sounds like the river. Lake Mead is that way sometimes. Did you get to experience the big basin, any big rollers in the big basin? Because that's always a white knuckle ride, trying to come across that basin when the wind decides to blow.
The first 2 days were fine. When we were fishing, it got a little bit windy, but and I wasn't fortunate enough to make the cut. And the morning of the cut, they had to postpone the tournament because of high winds. So I never experienced any big wind. That was the first tournament that I fished with I got a new Ranger, the 520R, and I was excited to see how it was going to handle that rough water. And I just didn't get the rough water that, I wanted to test it out in, but I knew it would have handled it just fine.
Hey, switching gears, your bio says that you did a stint on the pro rodeo tour. What was that all about? And what was that like?
So for years, and I do hold rodeo, near and dear to my heart. That's something that I did for a long time when I was younger. And I rode bulls in the PRCA, the PBR. I never made the NFR, but I did it for a long time. And I think I did it for 11 or 12 years professionally. And and it's kind of funny because rodeo, riding bulls, traveling is similar to bass fishing as far as the camaraderie. Everyone's together and first thing in the morning, everyone's hooping and hollering and excited. And then come the end of the day, the guys did good or happy. And it's just so similar to the rodeo, and guys travel together and you have your little groups and whatnot. And so it's real similar to that. But anyway, it was I rode bulls for a long time, but my brother is actually he's a PRCA rodeo stock contractor. It's Bridwell Pro Rodeos. And he's actually in Fort Worth, Texas at the Fort Worth Stock Show. So he's at the highest pinnacle of rodeo
Wow.
for a stock contractor.
Wow.
So so I follow him pretty closely. And so he's still doing the rodeo. I'm out of it, of course.
I was going to say, a lot of former motocrossers have switched to bass fishing. There's kind of a similar thing there, but you're doing bull riding is kind of like motocross, only you have no idea what's coming next.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's a rough sport.
Yeah. What companies support you in your tournament fishing? Let's shine a light on your sponsors and what they do and what you do for them.
So Ranger is really stepped up for me this year. I got a national spot through them.
Nice.
So I am running the new 520R this year. So I got a national spot. So I've got a boat that I'll be running this year. I'll probably be running the 23 next year. So they're one of my main sponsors. Mercury, of course, I'm on the Mercury Pro team. I also got Frenzy Baits. They're Greg Gutierrez. He hooks me up on baits, and then also Cal Custom. So Redding Yamaha Sea-Doo was a boat dealership in Redding, and they changed ownership, and that's now Cal Custom, and they're giving me a lot of support there. So they're, like I said before, anybody that's looking to go in, that's interested in buying a boat, I really appreciate if they'd give them a look and talk to them. And if they want to go meet me on Shasta, we can go run around on my new boat. We can drive it. You guys can check it out. I can show you all the bells and whistles. It's decked out. It's got, I don't know if there's anything else I could put on that boat that, for tournament fishing that it's got everything. So you can take a look at that. And then Dean and Baits, there's a lot of other Black Bear Diner. That's another sponsor that I'm picking up this year.
Nice.
They're giving me a lot of help. St. Croix Rods, I just signed with them. I'm getting all that dialed in, and they've got a really, really nice lineup of rods. Genesis Boat Wraps, they're who's going to wrap my boat this year. They're giving me a lot of help, and so. I'm sure I'm missing other people, but
that's pretty neat to hear about all that. That's pretty cool. What's next for you? What's the next event?
Uh, I think I got to look at the calendar. I think February's pretty much got some, the Phil's Propeller tournament on Shasta. There's some local tournaments that I'll fish,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe the next one, I got to look at my calendar. One of the Wild West teams or pro-ams. I haven't even looked at my calendar, to be honest with you.
When is the next, and where is the next Apex event? Have you guys heard yet?
They won't announce that where it's at. I think it's in April, but so the way the Apex works is it's a 30-day off limits, but they will not announce the location of the event. They're trying to keep it as fair as they can. They don't want anglers going in pre-fishing and stuff, which is, I think, is awesome. It's the purest way that you can get out and get guys to fish. So they haven't announced the location. I can't remember the dates either. I'd have to get the dates pulled up, but I believe it's in April. My gut's telling me it's out of California. I don't think we're going to be fishing California at all for the Apex, is my personal opinion. I don't know that to be true. No one's ever told me that, but which is awesome. I think it's really cool that we're going to be going to these areas that no one's fished. And it's just the purest way to really get out there and figure it out. And like I said before, there's such good anglers in the Apex. It's such a good field of good guys and good anglers, and it's really showcasing how the guys can put things together. And I really enjoy it. And I'm prepared to get my head beat in, and I'm hoping I can have some good finishes because these guys are good and they can catch them.
I like that they have put you guys in some tough situations. The Mojave event in early January, that's like fishing in Siberia. The fact that anybody caught fish there, that's a testament to what kind of anglers there are. There's kind of a side of me as a fan that likes to see pros put in really tough situations. I'd like to see you guys come fish Lake Paris here in Southern California, where I am, on the 4th of July with all the jet skis and stuff out there. And that's kind of sick, but no, I mean, it's neat to see you guys push like that, because I mean, for us mortals, boy, Mojave, I just can't get over that Mojave in early January. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, that was definitely it was a tough bite. That's for sure. It was, it makes you rethink if you want to do this or not. So, it's brutal out there, but it's tough for everybody. So, and you'll have good events, you'll have bad events. You just got to roll with it.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, thanks for being with us tonight. It's a lot of fun. Good to meet you and good to talk to you. Best of luck the rest of the season, and we'll check back with you soon. Okay.
Absolutely. I appreciate being on the show with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.